Was a teaser.
I wonder what that could be.
Pretty nice.
I feel teased.
I've seen some crazy theories about what that is.
Yeah.
Chain Chomp is my favorite.
Yeah.
Feels gloomy.
Yep. Hi, I'm Peanuts. I'm a community manager. Joining me today are...
I'm Patrick. I'm a game systems designer on Dead by Daylight.
And I'm Remy. I'm the technical director. I'm thrilled to be here with you guys and with you at home.
Mm-hmm.
And just a really quick hi to our mods in the chat. Hi.
Hi.
Before we get into things, we got some news. DC penalties have been re-enabled. Would you like to say a couple things about DC penalties?
Yeah, we've put on disconnection penalties for people who quit games early. This will only affect people who quit games that are in progress. So if you have any...
Voluntarily.
Yeah, voluntarily, well, or for other reasons, right? Internet going out, whatever, we have to. But if you have issues in the game that involve disconnecting during the load into game, you won't be penalized. So don't worry, we're not being that mean. But,
and we are monitoring.
Yeah, we are monitoring.
It's working fine.
Spending a lot of my time looking at charts and checking out how the system is performing and behaving. So keeping an eye out for any kind of issues. But overall, seems to be working pretty well. Right. So pretty happy with that.
We're glad to have you.
I try my best.
What if I'm on McDonald's Wi-Fi?
If you're on McDonald's Wi-Fi, well, I mean, I would not recommend playing Dead by Daylight on McDonald's Wi-Fi. Spoiler alert.
But McDonald's safe.
Yeah, if you get any kind of disconnections that happen for any reason once you're already in a match, we have to consider those to be proper disconnections because there's no way for our system, or any system really, to tell the difference between somebody who turned their computer off, who hit Alt F4 and shut the game down, whose internet just vanished, or who just pulled the cable out from the back of their computer.
Who knows?
They all look the same, so we have to come at that with an even hand. But early penalties are pretty gentle, so if that just happens to you once in a while, shouldn't be a big deal. We're really going after the people who habitually disconnect game after game after game.
Right. Second thing, happy rank reset day.
Yeah.
Some of you are getting reset a little bit further than you should. We're looking into that. Some of you are also not getting reset at all. So if you're not getting reset, try relaunching the game. That should fix it. If it doesn't, be sure to fill out a bug report on the forums and we'll take a look. Next week, we have a PTB for the next chapter. We also have a dev update on the way.
Words are hard.
Yeah, they are really hard. And that's going to have a bunch of spicy info. And then final thing is stay tuned till the end. We have a nice surprise for you.
Oh,
just a little one.
A surprise.
You've never seen it before.
I haven't.
Me neither.
Exciting.
I'm very clueless about these things.
Yep. So let's just jump right in. Today we're going to be doing something a little different. We're not going to be talking about Q&A stuff. We're going to be going over hitboxes, latency, and what we're doing to sort of get rid of that a little bit.
Hitboxes.
Yeah, very technical chat today.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's why we're here.
Going right in it. But hitboxes.
Yeah.
Hitboxes, I say, in a completely unscripted manner. What do they look like?
You mean capsules?
Capsules?
Well, okay.
I thought you said boxes. Now I'm confused.
Yeah. Let me clarify a bit of context for you. So we'll get into physics a bit. So it's gonna get physical. You're okay with that?
I'm okay with physical.
In fact, you're in luck because I actually have a capsule down in my pants. I think at the moment.
This is getting upsetting very quickly.
You want to feel it?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
See. So this is a capsule.
That's quite a nice capsule you've got.
Yeah, stubby, sturdy.
Well,
reliable.
Gets the job done.
It works. So in the game terminology, we say capsule, we mean this. It's like a cylinder with hemispheres on both ends. So it's very useful. It's like a generic form that allows a lot of things. Like, for example, I'm going to show something on screen. So you're actually going to show what's the capsule on the killer actually in the game. So you see it's a bit larger than the character. So this is the collision capsule. This is what is used for collision against wall, against other players. We can also now show you the same, but the capsule on the survivor. So you see it's slightly shorter. It's about the same size overall, but slightly shorter. We can show them side by side if we want. So you'll have a good, there you go. Yep. So you have a good idea of what they are.
I love the father-son moment they have going on there.
Yeah, there's a lot of a bonding moment, if you will.
They tend to be like that when you're not playing the character in game. We can also show something else. So we have another capsule that's hidden inside this one. It's called the slashable zone, so we can show it. It's slightly smaller. We see it here inside the editor. This is in fact the hidden zoo that we work on when we develop features. So you see the capsule on Claudette here. This is really the zone that you are going to attack when you try to hit her. So this is what you would call the hitbox. But in fact, that generic term covers pretty much all of them. There's also a third type of hitbox that we'll show a bit later. But for now, let's say that the reason why they are slightly different size, it's to prevent people from, let's say, stacking on top of each other. Let's say you go and you fall down on another character, you want to look realistic.
Yeah, if you look at the shape of the capsule, right,
Yeah.
you've got the rounded top, you've also got the rounded bottom. And what this means is, if you can imagine a second capsule on top, when they land, it's like stacking two balls on top of one another. They kind of, it's really hard. They slide off of one another. So the idea behind a capsule shape like this, both on the top and the bottom, prevents human pyramids or stacking of them.
But you're welcome to try.
Yeah, you're certainly welcome to try, but good luck.
Yeah, please send your best ones.
Yeah, your best human
I'd love to see
pyramids.
it.
I want to see them. Yeah.
There's also another interesting things that you can learn about the actual collision capsules on the characters. We made a thing where in the basement you get this staircase that you can go down. So if the killer stands right in the middle, he's pretty fat. Like he can block you. Like
You can block the whole thing. There's not enough space on either side of the killer's capsule for the survivor capsules to scooch by, right?
Exactly. So we did this small change in the code to make it so that if you try to glide past, your capsule will actually slightly shrink, like in a sort of a linear fashion. It will shrink and you'll be able to just zip by, like a fish in the sea, or a fish in butter, maybe.
A buttery fish.
A buttery fish. One of the
Metaphors
best kind.
are not our strong suit here, but we're the tech guys, right? Not the metaphor guys. So
Right.
it works out.
And if you want to know a bit like why is it a capsule that we use in the game, we need to remember that the game started as a purely melee attack game and there were no projectile.
Yeah.
So it's the reason why we did that, in a sense that it's optimal, it works, it does what we want.
It's also more efficient, right?
It's efficient.
It's a lot more efficient. It's also very standard. This is not like something that's unique to Dead by Daylight.
No,
We
no,
see
no. It
this
has
in
been
yeah.
used for centuries. Like even like palette swap plumbers would use similar technique.
Exactly. Simple stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's how a hitbox works. How do you hit somebody?
Well, when you hit somebody, there's an extra step to this, right? You've got we've showed you the hitbox, the as we call it, the slashable zone, for where the killer does the attack.
Yeah. The receiving end.
Yes, the receiving end, but the other end of that is the killer doing the actual swing. And the way we handle that is we draw basically a cone shape in front.
Yeah,
of
we
the
can
killer.
show it actually.
Yeah,
on the
actually,
screen.
we have
You'll
a
see it.
we have a cone shape that we can show. Yeah, there we go. So you can see the two collision capsules of the characters. The collision capsule of the survivor there is that's the collision capsule, right?
That's the
not
collision
slashable.
capsule, so it's not showing what you would hit.
Yeah,
but
but
you
it's-
see this red and this yellow cone shape.
It's close enough, right? This is pretty representative of what we're talking about here. So the idea here is when you look at those cones coming off of the killer, those are cones that are used to measure whether or not that attack is landing. And the rule is really simple. If your red cone overlaps the hitbox or the slashable zone of the survivor, that's a hit.
That's a hit.
That's a hit.
But tell me, Patrick, since you're so knowledgeable and all, what happens if I have a character that has a short hand or short weapon?
Well, the length of the weapon of our characters doesn't change the size of that hit capsule or that hit cone that's coming off. So all killers in our game, the basic attacks and the lunging attacks, all have the same range on that capsule. We actually we've done an update to the game, I think last summer, that made it so characters with shorter weapons, like I'm thinking Legion with his knife, right? He does attacks that now reach a little bit further.
Throws, a bit
kind of
further.
reaches out there to
Right.
try to match the size of that capsule. Guys with bigger weapons, we actually will even do things where we kind of maybe pull it back a teensy bit so that it tries to line up as much as possible with that capsule, or with that cone, so that you have a better concept of how far your attacks go, and to make it not look silly, like, oh, I missed by a foot, but I still hit the guy. That's silly, and we don't like it.
Indeed.
So we've done those kinds of changes in order to make it more consistent.
And shall we explain a bit why there was a red one and a yellow one?
Yeah,
there's something called, well, it's been called the auto name.
Right.
Auto aim in the game, but really we are naming it internally the aim dressing.
Yeah.
So what it does is that this red box is just a bit inside. The yellow cone is like a wafer thin
Yeah,
mint.
it's you can see on the screen there. It's not terribly further ahead than
yeah.
the red one.
And that purpose is to actually see if you would hit someone and slightly turn you and make you look like you would hit the guy. So it's just a sort of dressing on top to make your animation a bit feeling more connected to the hit you're gonna get.
Exactly. It's not going to give you a hit that you wouldn't have gotten anyways.
That's right.
The purpose of this aim dressing, as we're calling it right now, is when you do land a hit, especially if somebody's kind of at the edge of the cone, right? This is for like those fringe cases on the edge. We do things like rotate the camera and move your character closer after the fact. The hit has already effectively been decided at that point, and now we're kind of scooching the camera so that you can see the hit land.
Right.
Because it would be very disorienting, and it is disorienting and confusing when you're playing the game and you get a hit, but you don't see it on the screen, right? You swing your weapon, and the survivor juked a little bit to the side, and all the blood splatter and all the cool stuff happens off to your side, and you go, what, did I hit him? Did I not hit him? It's hard to tell. So what this does is we scooch that camera just a wee bit to make sure that you're able to see that survivor get hit. You get that kind of hit feedback.
Right.
But it does not give you hits.
A free hit.
Yeah, there's no free hits here. We're not actually,
launch.
we're not helping you. We're just dressing it up and making it look pretty so that you have a good time.
There you go.
So just to be 100% clear, if somebody's not on my screen and I attack, I'm not going to hit them.
You're not gonna hit.
The only rule that we use for these is that cone, that hit cone, does it touch the hitbox of the survivor? That's it. Yes and no.
Okay.
If the answer is no, then you don't get a hit. If the answer is yes, then you do get a hit. And in that case where the answer is yes, we'll rotate the camera just a wee bit to let you see that you got that hit. That's the key difference to make there.
There you
So
go.
I guess the next question is, why do I sometimes get hit way through a window?
Right. So that's
a different topic.
yeah. That is a
I think
different topic.
we'll cover that in the movement phase.
Do we have how many notes? Somebody gave me notes.
Let's just
see
talk
where
about
we are.
latency.
I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we are.
Yeah.
We are at that section of the notes.
Whoa.
Works
Okay,
out.
so let's explain
That
what
was-
is it. So
he made
what's
an amazing
latency?
transition.
It
and
was so seamless.
We bungled it real bad.
So explain us what is latency if
So
you want
what's latency?
to know
Right.
really like the
So to
Yeah,
rewind
okay.
and try to save this terrible bungle that we've made here is why do you feel like you've been hit from too far away in the game?
Yeah.
This isn't actually a hitbox issue because again, like I said, the logic there is very, very simple. Did the survivor's hitbox touch the killer's swing cone? Yes or no? The problem here is latency. And latency...
What is it?
To really break it down in the most basic form so we're all working on the same definitions, when you're playing Dead by Daylight on your PC or console, I'm going to say PC, but console guys, please don't be offended. I just don't want to...
Machine.
Yeah, machine, right? A device, if you will. When you're playing it on your local device, you click a button to perform an action. Say, make an attack, move in a direction, literally anything you want.
open a locker?
Open a locker, check, kill a survivor, hook a survivor, whatever it is. It actually takes time, not just for your machine to read that button input, which is pretty small. Like realistically, that is a very, very small
It's
amount
inside
of time.
one frame basically.
Yeah.
The game processes the input and then
Yeah,
see the
way
result.
way below, in most cases, way below any sort of human perception. But then that message takes time to go to the game server and have the game server process it. Now, that amount of time is variable. That's your latency. It's determined by all sorts of things, the quality of your internet connection,
Right.
the quality of your connection, not just to your local internet, but to the server that you're playing with.
That's what you can measure with the utilities like ping, for
Yes.
example. You get that round trip,
Yes.
and it's the latency times 2 because it's the time it takes to reach the server, and then it needs to go back to you.
Yeah.
You get your result.
Exactly.
That's the latency.
The general terminology is latency usually refers to a one-direction trip, so that's my message going from my machine getting to the server.
Right.
And then ping is, makes sense if you think about the name, that's it going there and then coming back to you, right?
Pong.
Ping pong, right?
Et
So it's, that's the terminology you get. A lot of people, and even we, will mix those up because they're kind of synonymous, but there is a very distinct technical difference, which is important to know. So when you click a button, like I would like to launch an attack right now, you're sending that message as soon as you can to the server, and then that's distributing it to the other players. Now, for most of our players, something like 95% of our players, with the advent of the dedicated servers, the ping that you will be dealing with, so the send time to the server and then back again, is less than 150 milliseconds, which is pretty fast. That's a pretty good ping. That's not too bad. It's a little bit over 100 milliseconds is a tenth of a
but still, it has quite an impact.
Yeah.
So if we want, we can show a video that will show it clearly. So let's see a hit that would be performed by a killer with an ideal situation where you would have no lag at all. So.
This is what the killer sees.
Killer is about to hit the guy, jumping on the ball. Well, he missed it because he jumped in time. So we can see the same thing from the point of view of the survivor now. So he's about to vault. Wow, nicely done.
And this is happening on a connection that's very, very, very low latency, right?
Yeah, it's an ideal situation. Let's say you would have no latency at all.
Exactly.
That would be what would happen.
Yeah, and so this means that both the killer and the survivor are talking to one another fast enough, their latency is low enough that they're pretty much seeing the same thing or close enough to the same thing on their screens.
Exactly.
There's no perceivable difference between the two.
But now let's go and see the same situation again, but with a 150 millisecond
which again,
delay.
150 milliseconds, small amount of time, but here's what happens.
Small, but see the difference.
You can see here the killer, he hit the survivor. That made perfect sense.
But let's look again from the point of view of the survivor. He saved his window, and then boom, he got hit.
He got hit.
And he was
like they
far
saw
away.
completely different things.
Yes, because they do see completely different things. Because unfortunately,
and again, we see the video, so it's pretty clear that it does have sort of a major impact on gameplay.
Yeah, 150 milliseconds is actually when you're dealing with tiny fractions, like did he get through the window or not in time? It can cause a big discrepancy in what the two players see. And this is something, obviously, that we don't like. We don't like that these people are seeing such different things. So there's a lot of techniques we can use.
We need also to remind people that the killer in that kind of situation has authority over the hit detection itself. So the killer, from his point of view, since he did get the hit, it's valid.
Exactly, because if we flip that around, the killer could take a swing and see that weapon go right on through the survivor, and then the survivor would run away. So that would feel great for the survivor. On the survivor's screen, that would make sense. I was out of range, I ran away, he missed, that's cool.
Right.
On the killer's side, we'd be hearing killers going, what the heck, I should have hit, I saw the weapon go right through that guy's head, why didn't he go down?
And that's a game changer.
Absolutely,
if you miss that hit, he can go on for another 30 seconds, keep running.
Exactly.
Right. So you know what? Dinefash. Because we do have something in mind to actually help on that kind of situation. We have sort of a presentation that we prepared to explain a bit how we want to proceed with the prediction of movement.
Yeah, so I guess we should back up here and say that, well, I mean, you can explain it here with your beautiful PowerPoint.
Oh, we could explain it. So, okay, let's demonstrate with the, shall we call them crude graphic? Simple graphics?
Simplified visual representation.
Simplified HAID.
It's worth noting that this is the same presentation he gave in front of the entire team.
Yes,
it was.
Yes, just to be clear, we're giving you guys the straight goods.
Professional.
So let's see from like the point of view of a regular first-person shooter. You got your first player. Let's say call him Arnold. He's mad. Like he has a green shirt. He's running to the battlefield. And he has an opponent, let's call him Braddock, equally mad. They're both like running and rambling and gun blazing. Let's see what the server would see in that kind of situation. So we need to remember from what Patrick said earlier that since there is a slight latency between the communication, the server will actually see that scene somewhat in the past. So the server will see both players a bit behind where they are really. So you see them on the screen here at a certain distance. Let's see from the point of view of Arnold, the first guy. So what would be his point of view of that situation? Well, he sees himself ahead because
he has that information right away.
He is his own player, so he sees movement right now, but he sees player B, Braddock, a bit in the past. Now, we flip the thing. We look from the point of view of player B. Same thing, he sees himself ahead and he sees player A behind. Have you noticed that in all three cases, the distance between them is always the same? So the bout that is about to happen is going to be somewhat the same event at a slightly different location, but the game will work fine. So that's what happened in your generic shooter.
Yeah.
Now, what's so different about Dead by Daylight? Like, why are we even talking about this now? So we have to remind ourselves that in Dead by Daylight, usually, the survivor actually flees from the killer.
Yeah. Not going in for a hug.
No. So here in this graphic depiction, we see that they are 2 meters apart, and we are going to look at the point of view of the survivor again. It's going to be similar to the video that we just shown. So from the point of view of the survivor, he sees himself ahead of time and he sees the killer behind. So he's 3 meters apart. Same thing, we show them the situation from the killer point of view. We're going to see that he's actually very close. He's 1 meter apart. So during this pursuit, what would happen? What would you think would happen if that killer would land a hit?
This is what we'd see in that video.
It would hit.
Yeah.
Exactly what we saw in the
And it
video.
makes perfect sense to the killer that hits.
Yeah, and he's
because-
proud and he's happy.
Yep.
Now, let's look at the same thing from the point of view of the survivor. Well, that hit connects, but he feels cheated. And what happened in that case? He says, fix your hitboxes, because this is what it looks like, and it's normal. So that's what we're trying to explain here. So we have a plan. So how do we want to address this? Well, first thing, we need to remind us that gameplay first in Dead by Daylight means we want to keep the gameplay responsive. We want it to feel reactive. You want your action to take place immediately.
Yeah.
So that's important to us and for our players. So the point we are trying to make here is that we want to do something that will predict your movement and push the player toward where they should be instead of where the information you got from your network. By doing some tests that we actually tried on the PTB, on the last one, the public test that we did, we used it. However, to prevent abrupt changes in direction, we also made something to dampen the input somewhat. But we had a mixed reaction, so it would prevent some users, some advanced movement and some abrupt change in direction that are very important and core to the game.
Yeah, it's a really tricky thing to try to strike the correct balance between point number one, right, keeping gameplay feeling really reactive and responsive to your input, but then also point two, which is to reduce that distance disparity. We need to find a balance here. We need to find a way to impact that sense of movement and that sense of control that you have as little as possible, while making the game more fair and more clear and having everybody see the same thing on their screens at the same time. This is a pretty big challenge.
It is, and we're working on it, and we even brought some physical bobble to actually help us and remind us how to make it work.
Okay, we'll put his collision capsule right there.
Yeah, so it's pretty much explained.
So it's worth knowing that you can't really get rid of latency. You can use some small optimizations.
Yeah,
we can work on it to make it look and have less impact, and we have several key points that we can work on the game. We'll go over them in the next segment anyway.
Yeah, I mean, well, are we at the next segment already? Have we done it again?
Oh, before we do, as a killer, does this mean I'm going to get more or fewer hits?
Well, it won't change that really, because on the killer side, you'll still have the authority on your hits. So if you see someone in front of you and you hit, you're gonna land a hit. Whatever the technique we use to dampen or reduce the distance, hits are always going to be locally done, so you feel that you got the hits.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, it's just going to feel a lot closer to what it actually is.
Yeah, really what it's going to do is it's going to reduce the discrepancy between what the survivor and the killer sees on their screen, right? So right now the problem is that killers see a valid hit and survivors see a total miss. And that's not fun when they're both seeing different things.
And that's under like somewhat high latency
that's under
conditions.
moderate latency conditions.
Under low latency, that is less of an issue.
Much less of an
the
issue.
situation much less, but yeah. This
So,
is,
so the idea with these sorts of fixes is to make it so that when the killer thinks he got a hit, the survivor also thinks he got a hit.
Yeah, that's the
Both
goal.
of you should see the same thing on your screen. So it's not going to be about giving more hits to the killers or taking hits away from the killers. It's going to be about making sure both of these players see the same event on their screen and go, yes, this makes sense.
and voila.
Okay, well that pretty much covers that.
Yeah.
We have some questions from the community.
We do?
Yep.
The Q&A section?
I know, that's crazy, yeah.
Oh man, we got
Is
to
it the quarrel and anguish section. What's for first-time viewer? What does it
Question
mean?
and answer.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
And if you want to ask a question, what you can do is you can keep it on the forums. We post a thread before a stream, and we can take your questions. We answer them on stream. Simple as that. If you ask in Twitch chat, we do have mods keeping an eye out. So if the mods want to post them in the Discord, I will take a look. We might try to answer some of those, but these ones have been asked ahead of time.
We need also to remind our viewers and people that when we hear complaints, what we do see, in fact, is feedback.
Right.
And any feedback is good feedback from us. It means that they love the game. They want us to fix things. And this is very positive.
Yep, constructive feedback is always welcome.
Yes.
Okay, so first question from Hadid. What influenced you guys to make the Survivor's hitbox a capsule instead of realistic?
so
Realism would mean you would have to do the collision on all the
every
triangles
little,
that makes
little
the
piece
character.
of the character.
A character is actually made of several thousands of triangles, and it would be very costly on the CPU side for detecting collision with the proper shape of the character. So it's customary to use simplified geometry such as this capsule, which has the simple geometric shapes. It's also helping a lot on sliding against wall, also sliding against another character.
Yeah, when you have lots of jagged little bits, it's actually really tough to do the math, the physical math, about friction and things like that. So a big part of the capsule, instead of having more realistic hitboxes, is from a technical side, is from an optimization side,
Yes,
right?
that's
We would have to raise the minimum requirements of this game up a whole bunch in order to handle really detailed collision capsules.
It also handles, for example, going up and down staircase and ground obstacles. That rounded part at the bottom of the capsule will make it like just go over tiny obstacles. And it works on its own. And also we need to remind us that the goal of the game was never to actually have exact and precise hit detection. So we went with the simple and most efficient.
It's not a precision-based game in the full meaning of the term, right? If you're playing a first-person shooter, right, a game that has sort of a difference between, say, limbs, like did you get a headshot is bonus damage. If you hit them in the body, there's less damage. If you hit them in the arms, there's even less damage, that kind of thing. You need some way of making those sorts of determinations. So, like, it is certainly possible to do that kind of thing. It's just that it doesn't benefit Dead by Daylight. It's not the intention of Dead by Daylight. We want you to swing your knife or your axe or whatever your weapon is and to just hit the character. We don't want any of this like, oh, it moved like a millimeter away from their earlobe and therefore it doesn't count as a hit. That would be really, really weird and not very fun.
Well
so simplifying it makes it more fun.
Right. And it's also something to be said about the fact that it'll make it more fair. If you pick a big survivor like Adam, you'd be easier to hit than a smaller survivor like
we wanted the capsule and the collisions to be always the same, whatever the survivor.
Like, and one of the things that comes up with having to have really precise hitboxes as well when you do that collision based more off of the model of the character is then you need to start doing things like making sure that everybody's machines are showing the animations on exactly the same frame at exactly the same time. That's tricky.
Also on the level design side, like you'll have all these exceptions to take care, like for like narrow corridors and obstacles. So
it makes things just a lot more streamlined from a development standpoint, and actually makes it a lot more streamlined from a gameplay standpoint as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next question we have is from Edgar Poop. Do killers have unique?
Nice.
I don't know if you can hear that. Pat's laughing off screen. Do killers have unique hit detection ranges? The nurse, for example.
So we were talking about that a bit earlier.
Why we shown it with a screenshot a bit earlier? So no, in fact, they do have exactly the same.
The basic attacks, and the lunges will have exactly the same hit detection range.
Except that we have some small tweaks that we can do here and there. For example, the nurse, when after a blink, she will attack faster. So the curves and the timing.
Powers will change.
Powers also, of course. Like, for example, the chainsaw would have its own range and like special rules. The Oni would also have.
The Oni's attacks also have special rules on it. So basic attacks, if you're mouse one, press or hold, right, that kind of thing, those are all going to have the same hitbox on them.
For fairness,
Yep. And I still don't know how to say this next guy's name. From Held 24330. Why is it easier to 360 a killer on console than it is on PC or keyboard and mouse? And are there any plans to make it more fair?
I think, in fact, yeah, you actually said it. It's not really console PC. It's more control type. It's controller versus mouse and keyboard kind of thing. So on a controller, it's easier to do like a smooth rotation because you have your thumbstick. You can do circles, so it's easier to maneuver that kind of movement.
Yeah, it's much easier on a controller to get that physical feedback. You know when your thumb has moved far enough that you've hit the edge, you can kind of roll and do these kinds of smooth motions.
Whereas the keyboard, you would have a harder time doing.
Keyboard's a lot harder to do those sorts of things with that level of precision because you've only got 4 buttons, which is effectively an 8-directional input, right?
Like a D-pad. But on the other side, however, the mouse
would
really
allow
you to rotate
difference.
very fast. So you'll have a harder time doing a 360 over a killer that has a mouse control because he can turn very fast and see you. Right. So both of these points combined makes it easier to do the 360. However, we are aware of it and we are working on it and having a higher controller sensitivity range. We are working on having this feature to alleviate that problem.
Right. Next question comes from Stitch7833. How does the auto aim work? And will you give us an option to disable it? So we've already sort of gone over this.
Yeah, we kind of talked about
it.
Yeah,
we covered it. We called it the aim dressing. It's really just a
Mm-hmm.
visual aid.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that shouldn't be. Well, it won't give anybody hits they wouldn't have gotten,
or ever so slightly.
Or ever so slightly, yeah, like the
wafer thin.
Wafer thin assistance to see something that makes more sense, but it's not giving you hits that you wouldn't have gotten. This isn't an aim assist. If you can't hit people, you can't hit people. It's as simple as that. So, given that we're not giving anybody hits that they wouldn't have been getting anyways, we don't have any plans to have that be a toggleable option. This is something that's more of a presentation angle for the game.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question from Cricket's Corner, excuse me. How are the servers performing according to your data?
A server?
The dedicated servers.
On the technical side, they are working pretty good. In fact, they are. You can know that they are running on the Linux machine, so they are running on a special hardware that has no video card. They don't need to render graphic. They don't need to render sound. So they can run a pretty lean version of the game. So they are actually so efficient that we can run many games on the same server at the same time. So they can handle that. And they can. They are hosted in the data centers on Amazon, and they are fast. So we have
quite fast.
They are quite fast. So now, if you want to know more about the overall latency versus the listen server or the peer-to-peer that we used before?
I've been looking at some of the stats for that recently. We do, in fact, track those stats. And the majority of our players, I think it's somewhere in the like 95% of our players range who are playing on dedicated servers now, are playing
on the platforms that
on the platforms that have it, and we're rolling that out in the future for as many people as possible. But so the people on dedicated servers are 95% of them are seeing a latency of under 150 milliseconds, and I think it's closer to 85% are actually seeing a latency of less than 100 milliseconds. So that's 85% of people playing on dedicated servers are seeing less than 1/10 of a second of latency, or ping, I should say, in that regard, for their games. So this is a huge improvement over what we had before, and it's much more stable and consistent, which is really beneficial. Additionally, I would add that dedicated servers now are giving us the ability to do certain things that we couldn't do before. The nice thing about a dedicated server from a design standpoint is that it's a trustworthy authority. We can trust the things that a dedicated server tells us about events that have happened in the game. For example,
the disconnection
penalties. Disconnection penalties, we couldn't do that reliably before because it's hard to figure out who disconnected when you don't have that impartial authority figure, which is the dedicated server, to report that back. Now we have the dedicated server.
It's also that neutral base where we can unify our PC player base, which is on Steam and on the Microsoft Store, so they can play together using the dedicated servers that's running an agnostic system in between. So that makes it
allows us to expand our PC base like that, get more people playing together. It gives us things like the disconnection penalties, and there will be more more features like this in the future that we'll be implementing that wouldn't be possible on a peer-to-peer system.
Of course.
Right. And I've got a note here, DS on Xbox One. It is coming soon. We are still working on it. It's not forgotten.
Yeah, no, we haven't forgotten.
No, it's not forgotten.
Definitely
it's on our mind at all times.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Of the week.
Oh, even the weekend. I stress all the time, constantly.
Next question is from Snapshot. When I shock a survivor with the doctor's power just before they vault, half the time they vault anyway. I once heard the reason is apparently that the vault overrides the shock. Is this correct?
This is really similar to what we explained with the videos and things. And so from your point of view on the killer side, you might have sent your shock a bit before he vaulted, but from his point of view, maybe he did the vault before. So you have the server in between that will be like an impartial mediator that will decide whose action came first. And if the survivor has the vault first, then he would succeed in vaulting.
Yeah, a way of thinking about this using our visual
Our
aids
puppets.
that we have here, yes, our visual aids, our puppets, is that both of these players, if you imagine, this one, I'm looking at a reflection of myself here. Yeah, if the killer here, the doctor in this case, launches a shock at exactly the same time as the survivor hits the button on his machine to perform a vault, what happens is both of them on their own machines will start doing those actions. That's how we maintain that responsiveness. However, the fact that this guy's done a shock takes time, latency, to get over to the other player so he can see it. And vice versa is also true. He starts the vault, but it takes time for that message to get over to the doctor to see it. When they both press the button at exactly the same time, those messages actually go halfway and meet at the server. And the server decides which one of them happened first. And we're talking like milliseconds difference here. It's
Exactly.
We in the biz call it a race condition. You can imagine two people racing to a finish line. To inch or a mile, it's just about who got there first, and that's the one who gets taken.
Like
So-
horses.
Exactly. So
And there's a small time window in the action that you perform, like the vault, it's called the enter phase.
Yep.
That if the shock comes in at that segment, it will be cancelled and actually the vault won't happen. So
Yeah.
that exists.
they do exist, but usually what you're seeing in this event, in this this confusing moment that you're seeing here, this is happening due to that latency on the servers. Again, as we've talked about quite a bit today, there are ways for us to reduce this or to make it more clear to you. We're working on them. We care. We're going full force at these things.
Yeah.
And they will be coming out when they're ready for you to have.
Okay. It's also worth noting that the doctor does have a delay between when he shocks
Yeah.
That's
when
true.
the shock effect.
Which makes it, and again, the server takes that into account. So you click that button to launch that
You need
shock.
to press it a bit in advance.
Yeah, that shock has a bit of a delay.
Indeed.
And that race condition now is, has the survivor gotten far enough through the vault as far as the server sees versus is that shock effect actually kicking in? And whichever one came first wins.
Okay. Next question is from the Suicide Fox. Why do status effects on consoles cause such serious frame drops? For example,
Frame
mangled
drops.
or bloodlust.
Yeah, this is also something that is known. So if you remember, we did an effort for optimization, and we actually focused on reducing the baseline. I mean, reducing the time it takes to process for the baseline of the game. So all the gameplay, normal events would be faster, and the game would tend to go toward 60 FPS, which was one of our target, like, to reach that smooth frame rate. Some status effect like bloodlust and any of these status effects that actually performs a loading, like the load an asset when they are performed, might still cause some hitch. And we are working on fixing them as we go, because we know about them and we know that all these things will do this kind of stutter when you need them the most.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something that we have on our list that we know. Yeah.
I have a fun fact from McLean here. There was a bug causing Madness 3 screens to interrupt vaults. Only fast vaults, nothing else.
Well,
And the fix is on the way.
Ah,
So there we
nice
go.
to know.
what an odd bug.
Yep. Next question is from a Wild Luke. Can you please explain how pallet/window hits work? Like the timing, the distance of the lunge, the conditions, etc.
Yes, I think it's somewhat connected to the interrupt system that we
Yeah, it's very similar to the interrupt system. When players, which do we have I can't remember the order of all of our questions. It's almost like I have them written down here. Yeah. So the way pallets and windows work in terms of hits is very similar, right? It's performed based off of the same logic that we were just talking about. That cone from the killer gets projected out, and does it hit that hitbox of the survivor? When it comes to Windows, again, that latency issue that we're talking about exacerbates the perception. You know, remember the videos that we showed you earlier where the survivor saw himself having been through the window quite far? versus the killer who saw him on the inside of the window. The synchronization of those elements is something that, yeah, exactly. There's the video right there of the survivor getting hit. The intention here, of course, is that if the survivor got through the vault soon enough, be it a vault through a window or a vault over a pallet, that they won't get hit if they're on the other side far enough away. But if they're still close enough to the window, you know, the killers can reach through the window. That cone that we talked about reaches through the window, it can get you on the other side, right?
And that window's not like a force field. You can't actually hit through that.
Yes,
no, it's not a magical force field, right? You can swing through it.
Yeah, and intentionally.
Yeah, exactly. So really, I think that the rules for around how pallets and windows work, they're a logical extension of the hitbox stuff that we've been talking about, and the latency impacts that and can make it a little bit more fuzzy in terms of your interpretation of what's going on.
Yeah. And this is actually related. I'm going to be very careful saying this name, but from Munt Cuffins, why is Dead Hard broken on dedicated servers? So that's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. Dead Hard's not broken on a fundamental level. It's that latency that we're talking about. Dead Hard is one of the perks that we have in the game that more so than anything else relies on absolute split-second timing. And without having special cases designed in the dedicated server mechanics to handle that sort of thing, it can get a little bit unpredictable. If you're playing on really low latency, then that difference is pretty minor. Again, if you imagine playing on a 30 millisecond ping, that's really fast. Right now we're talking less than a 20th of a second. You know, at 30 milliseconds, you're pretty much counting how many frames have been rendered and not how much time has passed. So those differences are very minor. Once you get up to 150 milliseconds, well, that's for something like Dead Hard, which requires that split-second timing. 150 milliseconds is more than a split second, so it's going to impact that. So these are cases, things like Dead Hard are things that we're looking at specifically. Some of them, again, Dead Hard is a great example, are probably going to require some kind of special case love to get working as nicely as we want, but we are listening, we do know it's happening.
Yeah, it's known, it's in the list,
it's
in the priority.
In the list of things to make better.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question comes from Python Air. Do different characters have different size hitboxes?
We already covered it somewhat, so the answer is no. We decided to have them exactly the same, so they can, well, first maneuver in the level in the same areas, go to the same places. Also, we wanted for fairness, so you can hit exactly the same survivor. So the only difference would be your outfit color, your skill, your width.
Right. And the same goes for the killer's movement capsules.
Exactly the same for all the killers.
So the clown may look bigger, but he's not going around loops slower.
Yes, he's not moving through anything more quickly or slower.
Same
or
capsule.
Like that. And like Remy said, a big concern for that is level design. It's really hard to design levels for 50 different characters who all have slightly different sized boxes. You have to test every single conceivable angle and movement they do with every single one of those. That's just not feasible, and it's also doesn't add anything particularly fun to the game. Keeping everyone the same size keeps our pipeline nice and quick.
It's also why somewhat the capsule of both the killers and the survivor are almost exactly the same width, because we wanted them to be able to navigate exactly to the same area. There's a small, ever so small difference between them, but I think it's not impacting anything in the game.
No. Right. Well, aside from like the odd fat shaming spot. Anyway, next question comes from Eddie's. How does the game know when a survivor can be stalked? So, for example, why is stalking sometimes delayed, or you can't stalk someone who's wide open?
So we can explain the tech part?
There's two parts to this.
Yeah, the tech part, it's really like a somewhat sophisticated process where it's called the occlusion query. So it's going to check if you're seeing some portion of the torso of the character you're looking at, you're trying to stalk. There will be like an invisible box centered on his torso, and the game will calculate if there's an obstacle between, like, are you seeing him? It's also checking if it's near the center of the screen, so if it's too much on the side, on the edge, you won't be able to stalk. And also the distance, so if he's far away, so you're not seeing like a huge percentage of that box that won't stalk. The reverse is true, like if you're trying to unstock Ghostface, for example.
If you're breaking Ghostface's stealth.
You're exactly using the same mechanism, so that's like the tech part of it. There's also another reason. There's the latency again.
There's a latency part again, which involves communicating from your machine to the server what's going on in the positions of those players.
Yeah.
And that's something that can be optimized further in order to get a better feeling of immediacy and response. But a lot of times the weirdness that you might feel of, I was stalking, but I wasn't actually getting any stalk progress on the survivor. That's because your machine is talking to the server and trying to decide that stalk as a conversation between the server. If the latency is too high, then there can be some delays in that. This is something we've improved since the launch of dedicated servers.
Yeah, especially for Myers,
Yeah,
for
Myers-
example, there
Myers
was
was pretty bad
like
before.
a triple handshake situation
Yeah,
where
yeah.
it would take a little bit of delay with the latency
Yeah,
thing,
it's-
so we shrunk it down. It's better. It's not perfect. We can still work on it, and it's known, but it's an ongoing process to make it snappier.
Yeah, as you can see with a lot of these questions, the answers are that each one of these mechanics has very special considerations to be had, especially on dedicated servers and how it handles with latency, and each one of them is going to require something of a custom touch to get them fixed. So we've got a big list. The questions show that we've got a big list of these things, but we're working through them as fast as we can.
So the short version is basically that I'm saying I'm stalking that guy, but then the server's telling me, no, you can't see that guy.
More or less, it's more like what you're saying is, hey server, I would like to stalk this guy, and the server is going, hang on, yeah, okay. But the fact that the server has to say it's okay means
Maybe
that
the guy moved away in the meantime.
Right.
and it means that you're a slave to that latency. You have to wait to hear back from the server before that meter starts to progress.
Yeah.
And likewise, you might get a valid stalk back a little bit late, which can result in moments where it feels like you just stalked somebody through a wall, because you could see them when you asked the server to stalk. By the time you got the answer back from the server, they scooched a little bit behind the wall. And that can result in some of that weird feeling of
Discrepancy.
stalking somebody through walls or in places where you shouldn't see them. It's not a matter of the stalking mechanic itself being broken, it's a matter of latency and time passing between these actions.
And yeah.
Right. Next question is from Traitorous Leopard. Why does healing have such a big hitbox?
Right. So the thing that happens with healing is not that it changes your hitbox. It's actually because it doesn't.
Yeah.
So basically, you keep that same height, that same hitbox that you would have when you are healed.
Yeah, I think the part to be clear here about is when you're a survivor and you're standing up, your hitbox is high and matches about where your head
Yep.
is, and when you crouch, your hitbox goes down to match that crouching animation.
To make you be able to dodge like a hatchet throw, things
Exactly.
like that. But for healing, it's not doing it. So currently, when you try to heal someone, he's looking at about a crouch position, but the capsule is still exactly the same as if he was standing. So that's a known issue that we decidedly we want to work on it and fix it because it's known.
That's a bug. I think we were talking about it just yesterday.
Yeah, we talked about it, and it's also covering more than just the healing interaction. There's a lot of other interaction that has the same exact behavior,
Exactly.
and we want to fix it.
Right. So that also affects when you're injured and your survivor's like hunched over. You maybe seem shorter, but your hitbox is still exactly the same.
Most probably.
Yeah.
Right. And this wasn't really a problem back when the game first came out because every killer just had a normal weapon.
There's a melee attack, and
But then the Huntress came along.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Huntress Plague as well.
The clown.
The clown. We have a fair number of projectiles now that we need to worry about. So these are the sort of things where now that they're a big problem, they float higher up on our list of things to do.
and we want to fix them.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah,
We want to give you guys the best game we can.
always.
Okay. The last question we have is from Kimison. Why do grabs often get canceled without a hit?
Yeah, that's a famous interruption system. So this in fact, it's infamous.
Yeah, infamous
interruption
system.
system. So we need to explain that at the beginning, Dead by Daylight was using well, not mostly, but only a listen server approach. where
Peer-to-peer, I think, is what a lot of people
peer-to-peer,
call it.
yeah, where the server is always the killer. So that at time when you try to interrupt someone by grabbing him, let's say he's trying to vault over something, it made sense and it worked pretty well. But now that we move to dedicated server, this old mechanic kind of show its age, and it's delayed because you need to have the survivor actually acknowledge that you're grabbing him, and by the time that it takes, usually he's actually away. So this is worse because it makes you that not even you miss your grab, but you're also not even doing a hit. So you're doing nothing. You're just waving at the survivor and saying, "Ta-da!"
Well, hi, goodbye. Exactly.
So yes, this is an important one that we are also working on.
Exactly.
So we want to fix this.
And for those of you keeping score at home, this is yet another issue that's coming from just the fact that latency exists. That it takes time for messages from one machine to move to another and then back again, and being able to get those two machines doing things that make sense for both and are fair for both players. The interrupts, the grabbing people out of windows and stuff like that, that's one that's not quite behaving up to snuff as far as we're concerned.
It's definitely one that we can improve on.
Exactly.
All the ones that we discussed, we can improve on all of them. But this one, we know exactly how it works, how we want it to work. It's just a matter of time and ongoing process.
Right. So you basically just can't grab somebody who's not actually doing the thing anymore.
Exactly.
Right.
Or if that person, somebody vaulting through a window on their machine, they say, yeah, man, I'm through the window. I'm gone, right? And on your machine, they're a little bit behind because of that latency delay, and it looks like they're in a grabbable state. They're not. You have to have that kind of agreement between the two machines in order to have the action go through.
Okay.
Well put.
So that's all the questions we have written down. There's a couple more that came from chat, if you guys are up for it.
I'll do my best.
For Mr. Not So Rational asks, why do you guys think it's better to prioritize hits on the killer side over the survivor side?
Well, that's actually pretty straightforward. It's because the survivor is the one, the killer, we're prioritizing on the killer side, right? Not on the survivor side.
Yeah, that's what he asked.
So all these character names, I'm getting confused already.
Look at the picture.
Yeah, I know. I need the pic. Which one's which? Okay. So the reason why we prioritize on the killer side is because the killer is the one doing the swing. It's in order to maintain that sense of responsiveness that we were talking about, we prioritize the killer's feeling of getting that attack off and hitting, and that's where it starts from. But like we said, even though we're prioritizing it on the killer side, we still need to make sure it looks and feels fair for the survivor. Right now, not necessarily as fair for the survivor as we want.
One of the solution we can think of, and we are working on elaborating, is having the dedicated server somewhat doing the actual acknowledge of the hit. So he's going to be, again, as we said earlier, the mediator, deciding if your hit works. So it's not only the killer would decide, it's actually a mix.
Exactly.
So it's a hybrid system, and we are tending to try to have something that would make the best of both worlds, so to be fair and also feel responsive. Yeah.
Okay. Next one is from Stabsaholic. If there's no auto aim, then why are there times where the game will prioritize hitting an object over the survivor?
That might be like the unintentional effect of this aim dressing feature. So what could happen is that in some tricky situation, you would give a hit. The system will actually help you and dress your hit to make you rotate toward, but because it did that, maybe now you're hitting a wall or an object instead. So this is definitely not intentional. It would be considered a bug or a flaw in the system that we would like to address and fix. That's what I would think of the...
It's basically an order of operations bug that we have where we should be determining the hit first and going, that hit is good, and then rotating your screen
the correction
and not pay attention to any collision after that. But that is clearly not what's happening. The problem right now is we go, okay, you're going to get that hit. Now let's make you face the guy. Okay, now let's check if anything's in the way. Uh-oh, and there's something in the way. That is not intentional.
There's definitely something that can be done to reduce that annoyance. Yeah.
Right. So it especially happens around like sharp corners.
Yep.
And if you see it,
Definitely.
please report it.
Of course.
Yep.
And that's pretty much it.
Nice.
I think so. So just to recap, going over the news, DC penalties are back. Rank reset errors, not errors, but if you get reset further back than you should, we are looking into that. If you're not reset at all, please relaunch the game. It will fix itself. We have a dev update early next week. PTB on Tuesday.
Nice.
So that's good. And then we have a little surprise for you.
All right.
But stick around after the surprise. We're going to host a Fog Whisperer by the name of Vixie. She's great. Give her some support. You've never seen this before.
No, I haven't.
Nope.
So
Mystery.
this is going to be great.
Total mystery.
Mystery.
I guess that's it. Enjoy. Bye.
Nice.
Thank you.
See you.